Unbelievable.
Yes, story of my
Well,
life.
just tell the joke again, and we'll see what happens the second time around.
Nothing. It is nothing.
You laughed the first time. Come on.
Says it to my wife automatically.
Awesome. There's a classic Faulty Towers quote. John Cleese
Love
is talking
Fawlty
to his
Towers.
wife. I love that show. And he's like,
Well, my license plate says Monty P, so...
that's great. He's talking to Sybil, and he's like, "Oh, do you remember the years we used to laugh?" And she's like, "Yes, but never at the same time." Hilarious. I found that to be funny. Whatever, you guys aren't.
Love it.
I've never even heard of that.
What?
Yeah,
You've never heard of
basically
Fawlty
dead
Towers?
inside. It's
Never
okay.
heard of it.
Basically. Oh my goodness, that makes me sad. That makes me really sad, actually. But it's fine. Yeah, it's fine.
Basil the Rat.
Oh, that's a great episode. Probably my favorite episode. That and the Germans. But getting off topic
Did you want to
here.
do a quote?
They worshipped, so they said, the great old ones who lived ages before there were any men, and who came to the young world out of the skies.
Welcome to another episode of the Great Old Ones Gaming Podcast. I'm Nate, lost in time and space of said YouTube channel. Joined with me tonight is...
I'm the man from Leng, host of the Whisper in Darkness YouTube channel.
I'm Innkeeper Vase Odin from the Twisted Tentacle Inn.
And I am Nathan Early of the Instagram Arkham Horror Images of Madness and Arkham Central.
And welcome to tonight's episode. So...
No, so were you going to tell me you were going to change up the quote at the beginning? Threw me off.
I know, I wasn't going to say anything, but
Wow.
since you brought it up, I was...
Rude.
Now I have to say something about it.
You've added a lot more titles to your name since
did
I was here last night.
Yes, that stuff, titles.
Yeah.
Or Titalias, as no one says.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think anyone says that.
Quote me.
Tatalias. Nathan Early,
I
2019.
literally just... Okay, that works.
Okay.
I didn't think you'd actually quote me.
Well, I mean, you did. Okay, anyway, so...
Titalias.
Tonight's topics for this episode, we're going to discuss the recent developments of the Dream Eater cycle, which includes pretty much all of the investigators being revealed at this point. So we're going to go over the new investigators, as well as the first Mythos pack of the Dream Eater cycle, the Search for Kadath. And we also have a couple of things that we want to mention before we get into tonight's main topics. Nathan?
Yes?
You said you weren't going to do something. Now you are doing something.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Oh, okay, yes, no, I do. You threw me off with your logic. So, for the 3 or 4 people that listen to our podcast, I'd like to give a humble apology. I had said we weren't going to do an event this year because of Arkham Nights coming up and because it was short notice. And then all of a sudden I decided to do it. And unfortunately, if you've seen any of my setups in the game, if I decide to do something, it goes overboard to the realm of obsession, to say bluntly. So we are going to be hosting at Guardian Games in Portland, Oregon, our first annual Beneath the Waves event. And it's basically kind of like a mini Arkham Nights or mini Gen Con event. We're looking to have roughly 40 to 50 people attend. It's only $5, which is way cheap considering that I'm spending hundreds of dollars in prizes to give people.
Shh, don't tell them that part.
Oh, no, there's so much good stuff. And I basically told all the people here in channel, if there were strings to pull with my connections in the world of Arkham Horror, the card game, I have pulled them all vigorously for this event. So I have Brian David Sandberg out of Canada writing a short story. I had a local artist, Cole Monroe. I can't remember his last name. He's gonna yell at me. He did the art for the event, our Facebook event. And then I've got Drawn to the Flame Mythos Busters because they're amazing. They're gonna do some shout outs. And then there's a bunch of special things I'm having commissioned. Bags, acrylic tokens, art, posters to give away. A lot of swag. So basically anyone who comes and plays from 12 to 8 that day, it's a Sunday in October, October 27th to be exact. Anybody that comes and plays that day will A, have fun, B, enjoy the community, and C, hopefully walk away with some really good stuff that they didn't expect to get that day.
So, what types of events do you have planned, Nathan, for the day, for people that do show up?
Good question. Basically, I need to talk to some people to figure out exactly how I'm going to run this, but it's going to be the Depths of Yoth Challenge. We're going to have the Blob that ate everything available. I'm going to have a full setup of Labyrinths of Lunacy available for at least 12 people. People can do Ironmans if they want to sit in the corner and see if they can do an entire story arc in the 8 hours that we're there. I'm going to have a bunch of fan-mades all ready to go, so if people want to try a fan-made. Side note, I think it was Nate, I think you were the one who linked this, but Return to the Grand Oak, that is up there with the most exciting news I've ever heard for this game. I am so excited to play that, because I love the first one. And then somebody had also mentioned doing some Mountains of Madness fan-made stuff. So today was a good day.
That was me, because you had mentioned that in one of our previous episodes.
So good. But, there's going to be a lot of activities going on. Just be prepared to be surrounded by people that all love the game as much as you do. And, all I ask is that people become a little laid back. Don't have a set, I have to do this. But bring accessories, tokens, bags, scenarios, extra characters, because you never know what you're going to jump into. But I promise it'll be memorable, and I promise I will learn from all the mistakes that I'll make this year to make future years the best they can be.
Well, that sounds like a ton of fun, Nathan. So, again, that's going to be...
Yeah.
What is that? Cthulhu 27th? That's a Sunday, if I remember correctly?
That is absolutely correct. Cthulhu 27th, which is a Sunday.
At Guardian Games in Portland, Oregon.
Okay, and because I dropped the ball the first time, the gentleman who did the art for the Facebook event, his name is Cole Monroe Chitty. I do apologize for dropping the ball. He will kill me. He does great stuff. I commissioned him to do this piece. Thank you again, Cole, for such a great bit of art there.
Yeah, it really does look awesome.
It looks amazing.
Yeah, you guys will be able to see it when this episode goes live, so it looks absolutely great. So, again, that's October 27th.
Cthulhu, yes.
Yes, of Cthulhu. So, other business, Vase, you had recently done a video with the YouTube channel Winging It, and you guys did a collaborative Depths of Yoth playthrough.
We did. It was so much fun. We ran Carolyn and Diana Stanley with 49 experience points each. And we just did a standalone version of Depths of Yoth, which has no ending. You just go as far as you can. So we called it How Low Can You Go? And we went for, I think the video's about 3 hours. So it was a lot of fun. A lot of crazy stuff ended up happening, but the girls did much better than we expected. And the playthrough, you can watch it on Jeff's channel at Winging It on YouTube. Just look up Arkham Horror Winging It, and we'll link it in the episode description as well. But yeah, definitely while you're there, subscribe to Jeff's channel. He does a lot of playthroughs with two-handed, which you don't get a lot of on YouTube. So he does a lot of two-handed games, and they're really well done as well.
How low did you go?
Darn, I can't remember what level, but I don't want to give it away either. But we did very well. Let's just say that...
that's a likely excuse.
Yeah, let's just say Gig didn't even stand a chance.
Damn. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll have to find out how low you did, in fact, go. But since you've been busy doing all of those playthroughs, Man's actually had the chance to actually catch up to you in your Circle Undone campaign.
Surpassed me, yeah.
Have I surpassed you?
Well, maybe.
I just did For the Greater Good, so I thought you were on...
Oh, no, so I am on Union, or we've completed Union and Disillusion. That's how far I've
Okay, so I'm going to pass you this week. I haven't passed you yet, but I'll
up.
probably pass you this week.
Maybe.
Oh, snap. Yeah, and once you guys finish that campaign, God, it feels like it's been taking forever.
Right.
we can finally actually sit down and talk about that campaign as a whole. But before we go into the main topics of tonight's episode, Patreon business, the support of the Eternal Lord Robert Bout and his Order of Crazed Cultists, otherwise known as our patrons, help make this show possible, and we are happy to announce that Part 1 of our first Delta Green operation will be live alongside this episode. In this special episode of the Great Old Ones Gaming, Vase takes on the role of the handler for friend and patron of the show, Solar J, his brother Geo, Vase's brother Geo, and myself as agents of Delta Green. And join us as we investigate the strange disappearance of an up-and-coming artist in New York City and the horror of Operation Night Floors. So, to kind of give you guys a rundown of what these playthroughs are, instead of being live playthroughs where you hear a bunch of stuttering and other things, I've gone ahead and edited out all that kind of nonsense, and I've made it a more coherent story and put some background music and Foley noise into it, so I hope you guys enjoy that. So,
woo!
Yeah. So, moving into the investigation phase of tonight's episode. Who wants to start off with your investigator of choice?
I think that I'm really, actually, quite a few of them have caught my eye, but I am most definitely looking forward to the violinist herself, Patrice. Yep, Patrice looks like she is a new puzzle to solve, and seems to be the type of investigator that really is going to look into packing herself with a bunch of skill cards and cycle through her deck pretty quickly through each scenario. So I'll just read what Patrice's text says. She is a survivor with 4 willpower, 2 intellect, 2 combat, and 2 agility. Performer cursed are her keywords. Her maximum hand size is reduced by 3, so she can only have 5 cards in her hand out of the box unless she has some card that increases that hand size. During each upkeep phase, instead of drawing 1 card, discard all non-weakness cards in your hand and draw until you have 5 cards in hand. And her elder sign is +1 after the test ends. You can shuffle all but 1 card from your discard pile into your deck. And she has 7 health and 7 willpower. And she almost seems like what you would get if you had a permanent Brown Jenkin attached to you, because you're constantly discarding your hand and just drawing new cards to replace to go back up to 5. So because of this, that's why I was thinking skill cards would be great in her, because you're going to use those every round for all sorts of tests, and then just keep drawing new ones, and you don't care if you discard them because you're just going to keep getting more cards to boost your skills. The one thing that I think might be an issue is her weakness, her signature weakness, which is the Watcher from Another Dimension. It's a unique creature weakness, 5 combat, 2 health, and 5 evade. With the keywords,
sounds like creepy, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the theme. It's just oozing with theme, and the way the mechanics work with this card are even more amazing, the way they were able to pull off the theme. It's got the monster and extra dimensional keyword, peril, hidden, and hunter. So it's a hidden card, which means you can't discard it no matter what, other than by the text on the card. And it's a peril, so other players can't help you when you're trying to deal with it, which is really, really brutal. Revelation, you add the card secretly to your hand, and you may fight or evade this enemy while it's in your hand, as if it were at your location. If you succeed, discard it from your hand. If you fail, spawn it engaged with you. It's an enemy that's just in your hand, and you have to constantly or fight it, and no one can help you fight it while it's in your hand, which is insane.
You know, it reminds me of my teenage childhood, I'm just saying.
Yeah, and the worst part, it does 3 damage per hit. And when your deck runs out of cards, if this enemy is in your hand, it attacks you from your hand for 3 damage, which is just brutal. With a combat and evade of 5, I mean, you just have no way of getting away from it. You're going to have to just find a way to deal with it. And it can take you out pretty quickly. So that's the one thing that worries me in Patrice, but I think that her deck building is, or once they reveal her deck building, we'll know a little bit more. But she seems really interesting with her special ability.
Is she a botanist, or what is she? What class is she?
She is a survivor. I don't see anything about botanist, violinist.
That's weird.
Violinist.
Oh,
Maybe.
yeah.
Ah,
That's what I was
so
thinking.
does she have a violin to play, or?
She does. So that's her signature asset. Is Patrice's violin. It's a 2-cost asset with, and it says "My Muse" is the subtext. It's a 2-cost unique asset with willpower, agility, and wild icons. Patrice can choose and discard 1 card from her hand and exhaust the violin, and she can choose an investigator at her location to either gain 1 resource or draw a card. So basically, she can replace one of the cards in her hand if she's playing solo, or if you're playing in a group. It's a pretty interesting support card. She can discard her card to have another investigator either gain a resource or draw a card. So that makes her a pretty flexible investigator for playing in a group and being a support investigator.
I'm kind of disappointed this doesn't take 2 hand slots just for flavor purposes. I mean, it's taking both of her hands to play that violin. I'm just saying.
Not while she's holding it.
I mean, sure, but okay, all right, fine. I'll concede that point.
Or what if she's like Hendrix and she just plays the violin with her teeth? She could
Okay,
do that.
fair enough. All right, yeah, fair enough.
Okay.
I mean, from a mechanical standpoint, obviously, it's like totally fine. But I'm just saying she's holding it with 2 hands in the art, so it just. Anyway.
Yeah, that's kind of weird, isn't it?
It'd be funny if the quote for that violin was like, "Could have been a Stradivarius, but no, F you, Arkham."
Stradivarius. So the one thing with her, like, it seems someone mentioned, I can't remember on which community, is that she's gonna cycle if she has a standard 30 card deck. She's gonna cycle through her deck every game, so she's gonna see all her weaknesses every single game. There is no chance that she won't. So you'd pretty much have to strategize around that every time.
That'd be funny if like there was fan art for her that just showed her with like a bicycle helmet and gloves
Why?
because she's cycling through her whole deck.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, sorry. Maybe she'll be
Wow,
in the next
that went
cycle.
over my head for a second.
You gotta kind of gear up for that one. Maybe I spoke too soon.
That one got a smile out of me, Nathan.
I'll peddle my jokes later.
Oh my goodness. I didn't realize I was having a conversation with my wife. Jeez.
Yeah, can you handle it? What? I'm done.
Man,
Oh
save
my
me,
God.
please. Man, just.
We'll continue.
I would also say that that Patrice would be my pick of all the investigators, assuming there's only 5. I'd say Patrice is the one I'm most interested in. I used to play Netrunner back in the day, and there was a runner called Max who had basically this very same ability to cycle her hand every turn, and Max was consistently one of the best runners in the game, one of the most powerful runners in the game, and was always top tier at tournaments. And so I expect that Patrice is going to be probably on that same level. She's got the weaknesses are, she is going to draw her weaknesses a lot, and she's probably going to be taking a horror every game, a horror or 2 every game if she's cycling her deck.
Man for Lang.
Yes.
Quick question. If you forget to put the weaknesses in the deck.
Well, then that's okay.
All right. Just want to clear that up.
Then you don't have to, unless I don't know, are there any weaknesses that you get to remove from the game?
That'd be cool.
So she probably actually has 5 sanity instead of 7, because if she cycles her deck twice, she's gonna take 2 horror.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And then every time she draws a weakness,
Unless she
Yeah,
pulls the
that's
Elder
true.
Sign.
well, but you've got to pull. How many times do you honestly pull the Elder Sign in a game? Like some games
Yeah.
you're going to pull it a lot, and then others you
that's
won't see
right.
it at all.
And how often are you going to pull it and it save you a decent amount of cards?
True, because if you pull it early, it's pointless.
Yeah, well, I mean, she does get to shuffle all but 1, so that would give her quite a buffer. And but of course, assuming all but 1, that 1 will be a weakness. when you reshuffle.
Right.
So that will give her. So maybe she could get through, with maybe one cycle through a deck only once per game if she does at least get one Elder Sign. But I think, being able to replace her hand every turn, I mean, she gets to draw cards like she gets Dark Horse faster, she gets Drawing Thin faster, she gets all of those great Survivor cards. And her weakness is pretty nasty, but I mean, she's going to draw a Fire Axe, assuming she can use it, and this thing isn't going to stand up to a Fire Axe very long if she can somehow dump her hand. And considering that she's got a Violin that lets her discard a card.
Or a resource.
Yeah, it wouldn't be that difficult for her to either gain a resource to power her Fire Axe or ditch a card. Yeah, so she could ditch a card and gain a resource, so that just makes the Fire Axe that much better, as well as assuming she plays something like Dark Horse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think her biggest weakness is just her stat line, really. I mean, like, the Watcher from the other dimension is definitely brutal, especially if it attacks you, but I think the biggest struggle, especially in solo play, is the 2 intellect. It's just getting clues. Survivors aren't the best at getting clues. Like, they have some decent tools, but overall their investigation sucks.
Yeah, I think they've got enough. I between, Look What I Found and Flashlights and Winging It now is a good addition. Like, it can be, touch and go, but I've often felt like they have just enough. But yeah, there's not a lot of room for error. I guess the nice thing with her is that if she does cycle her deck, you're going to see those cards again at some point. Or if she happens to draw an Elder Sign, you'll see those cards again. So you got to play them or lose them. So that means she's going to be very aggressive. Like if you're going to be playing events like that, you're going to want to play them down. So you're going to be trying to be in locations where you can grab clues.
I think on that point too, man, it also really makes you think about the types of cards that you want to include in your deck. Like, I think the icons especially are going to be much more important because, like you said, you're going to be using them or losing them. So you want to make sure that your cards are always going to be usable. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed by her stat line, too. I mean, 4222 is not... She's got, I think, what's Wendy's willpower? Is it 4? And Ashcan Pete has 4, too, right? But willpower isn't used a lot isn't used, certainly like Mystics are. So she might be an off-class Mystic, in which case that would give her... if she was able to use cards like Sixth Sense, then she'd draw into those cards really quickly, get Sixth Sense down, and then she'd be investigating with willpower instead of intellect, and who cares what your intellect is at that point?
Yeah, that's true. That's pretty silly.
You can stack her with a bunch of intellect and combat icon cards because her willpower is already decently high. So she can leverage that as her defensive stat against treacheries and use commit your cards in your hand for combat and for investigation and still manage to succeed at least on a lot of tests. And since your hand's filling back up at the end of the round, you're not too worried about committing all these cards to a bunch of tests each round. So Lang, when you mentioned cycling through the deck and getting a lot of these events back, you brought up a good point here, because that means you're going to see your weaknesses possibly more than once per game as well.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, as like her, this Watcher from another dimension, assuming she can kill it in solo or have somebody kill it for her in multiplayer, she'd have to fail. Let me just see here. I think if you succeed, discard it from your hand. If you fail, spawn it engaged with you. So she'd have to fail to attack it. Then it would spawn. Then somebody else could kill it for her. So if you teamed her with a Guardian, I mean, Mark would make short work of this thing.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, just real quick, going to her ability, and it's interesting that both Vase and Man from Lang both really like Patrice. Actually, I have some other friends that have mentioned Patrice being really exciting to them too. I think there's definitely a type of player out there that really just likes to hand management and kind of do little things, almost play their own game of Arkham as you're all playing. So I think that that's finally something that really appeals to that type of player, which is good to have.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. Yeah, she's got an interesting mechanic. Whereas if I was to look at like probably the investigator who sort of interests me the least would be Mandy, just because
Definitely.
I don't find her response particularly interesting, which is like searching your deck. You get to search 3 extra cards, or I guess draw an additional card. It while it affects her deck, it doesn't really, I guess it just doesn't excite me as much. Not nearly as much as Patrice does anyway. And Mandy has she's got 3 willpower, 5 intellect, 1 combat, and 3 agility. So she's going to be, I mean, her ability is great for searching the deck. It doesn't really have, it doesn't really affect much else.
Yeah, Mandy arguably has the best stat line of the investigators revealed in this cycle, right?
Yeah.
Because she has decent agility and decent willpower. The two
decent compared to like a rat.
right. Decent defensive stats. So against treachery, she's going to be really good with her willpower and her agility. And then her proactive stat, her intellect is really high.
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't need the combat. As a seeker, she doesn't need to use the combat at all. So the points are basically spread out over the stats that are most important for her. But I agree with you. The abilities, when they first revealed her, I thought she was really interesting. But like you said, I mean, searching your deck, it's something that's pretty much seekers can do now with all these cards that have been, released. Mr. Rook and No Stone Unturned and a bunch of others, card draw and card search, is kind of Seeker's calling card already.
Yeah, she just gets to do it better than everybody else does, and that sort of style of Seeker hasn't really interested me in the past. That's probably why I'm cool to Mandy. I haven't played a Seeker that does a lot of that in the first place, so having a Seeker that does it even better just doesn't really appeal to me. Maybe I'll play her and I'll be like, oh wow, this is amazing. I get to find whatever card I want whenever I want it, sort of thing. But right now, I'd much prefer playing around with somebody like Patrice, where you're constantly cycling cards and you've got lots of neat little tricks you can do between committing cards to skill tests or using her violin or getting a couple assets down, and then you've got if you go the dark horse route, you're boosting your skills across the board, and then you can play around. Like the survivors have all those cards that work well. If you're like Madame Labranche, you could throw her in there and get some interesting interactions. Whether you have no cards or no resources and stuff like that. So I think she's quite interesting from that perspective.
Yeah, she's exciting because she's a completely different play style, whereas Mandy doesn't really bring anything new to the table, just better. And
for me, Mandy, I just see 5 intellect, and I'd be like, well, I'm just going to race scenarios with her.
Right.
Mandy's the perfect kind of investigator that you'd want to pair with someone like Patrice that just wants to draw a bunch of cards and look for a particular set of cards or combo pieces. But yeah, man, I want to like Mandy, as I like effects like Mandy's, but yeah, hearing your opinion, I kind of feel the same way. Mandy's ability kind of feels win more. If you're already getting cards out of your deck, getting more cards out of your deck generally doesn't always help. I know that sounds kind of silly, but it seems...
I think she'd work... I agree that she would work really well if you combine her with, say, somebody who's playing a more combo-oriented deck and they need certain cards to do what they want to do best. Like, say, a Guardian, if they wanted to play... I'm just picking a card here, Hallowed Mirror, right? It's limit 1 per deck, so... Suddenly you've got Mandy to help out find that Hallowed Mirror that much faster.
Yep. And then she also helps you draw into them
so you
faster.
Can get your Soothing Melodies into your deck. And if you're combining her with that sort of purpose, then I think she could be quite interesting. But as somebody who plays solo most of the time, that option isn't available to me. So it'd be just me searching my deck for stuff. And
yeah, and I want to preface that my statement is mostly talking about solo play too, because obviously in multiplayer, why don't we just go ahead and actually read what Mandy does here?
Sure, I can read her off. Like we said, she has 3 willpower, 5 intellect, 1 combat, and 3 agility. She's got she's the researcher with the assistant and scholar traits. She's got the response: when an investigator at your location would search their deck or the encounter deck, they may either search 3 additional cards or resolve 1 additional target of the search, limit once per round. And she has an Elder Sign effect of +0. Search the top 3 cards of your deck for a card, and then either draw it or commit it to this test. If able, shuffle your deck. She's got 6 health and 8 sanity. So she could, I didn't realize she could also search the encounter. She could also trigger her effect on the encounter deck. So that could be interesting. That has some interesting potential, depending on whether she's part mystic and can take scrying and stuff like that.
They kind of teased her deck building, and she gets to pick whether she can have access to 1, 2, or 3 classes, or something like that. And then her deck size.
Oh right, yeah, her. Yeah, you're right. Her. I've got the thing up here. Let me just find it here quickly. So she has. When her investigator deck is first built, she may choose to either fill it with 30, 40, or 50 cards, in addition to deciding between Mystic, Rogue, or Survivor classes to complement her remarkable skills as a Seeker. So the more classes you take, the bigger your deck's going to be. So yeah, she would have access to things like scrying and whatnot if you wanted to go the encounter deck route.
And there's always Scroll of Secrets.
This kind of presents like interesting, I guess, depending on if it's just level 0 cards, if she can take also upgraded cards. But it's kind of interesting that you can kind of build Mandy like you would Lola, but you don't have to deal with the absurd crippling weaknesses of Lola.
I don't think Lola and I appreciate that comment. Let me check. Lola, do you... Oh, hold on. She's having a crisis. Never mind. Just to clarify, she's done having a crisis. I asked her if she was upset. She said she was neutral on the topic, so continue.
Because you can, you have such a wide toolbox of cards that you're able to use. But yeah, it's really, she's really interesting in multiplayer, as you can fill her out to really do anything, and she's just one of those investigators you want to have on your team, but isn't going to be like the Rex Murphy or the Mark Harrigan that's probably going to do most of the heavy lifting for your team.
Well, I don't know. With 5 intellect, you can do a lot of heavy lifting in a game. I've often found, 5 intellect is the best text you can have in this game.
Well, it's even better when you investigate. Point of order: before we started recording, I said something, and the man from Lang laughed. Now, I'm a purist. It doesn't count. It doesn't count, and no one would believe me anyway.
That is true.
I'm just putting it out there.
That is true.
Shit went down.
It sure
It
does.
was real.
It is true. I can confirm that I did laugh at one of Nathan's jokes.
It's a shining moment in Nathan's life.
We weren't recording. It's not quite. It's like if you kind of cheat and get a royal flush of poker instead of get a natural royal flush. Totally different thing.
Yes.
All right, so we've talked about Patrice for over an hour. Nate, who would you pick as your investigator from the new box?
Hold on, one more thing.
I'm sorry, you're cutting out. You're cutting out,
about
Mace.
Patrice. Very, very quick. With Patrice, they managed to make...
Machete.
They managed to make Machete, yes. They managed to make an investigator that's very interesting, with interesting deck-building puzzles to solve, and not making her overly complex. Whereas some other investigators, specifically in this cycle, seem like they're going to be a little complex for new players, but I don't know, I guess we'll see. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and that's one we're all going to have to put to the test.
So, who is your favorite? Let's go with Nathan.
I literally asked Nate to tell me his favorite. Like, did anyone hear that? Was anyone else listening? Nate, who would you pick as your investigator from the new box? Nate,
I mean, other than
go ahead.
Patrice, Tommy Muldoon is pretty interesting. He's the new Guardian from the Dream Eaters. He's the rookie.
Not Guardian.
Tommy Muldoon is Guardian.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's thinking.
I don't know what Nathan is talking about over there. Anyway,
Go ahead.
I think he's thinking Tony Morgan.
Yeah.
is he?
Nathan is thinking Tony Morgan. Never mind. I crawl back. I crawl back into my hobbit hole with Lowell Hayes. Go ahead.
Tell us about Tommy Muldoon. Tell us what does Tommy do?
So Tommy Muldoon is the rookie cop. He has the police and warden traits. He has 3 willpower, 3 intellect, 4 combat, and 2 agility. He has a reaction that states, when an asset you control is defeated, gain X resources where X is the total amount of damage and horror on that asset, and shuffle that asset into your deck. His Elder Sign effect is +2. You may move up to 2 damage and or horror from Tommy Muldoon onto an asset you control or vice versa. And lastly, Tommy has 8 health and 6 sanity. So this is a pretty interesting take on resource generation for Guardian, which they desperately needed. I like the idea of using cards like Something Worth Fighting For and True Grit, and obviously your allies, to gain additional resources and additional benefits when those things go away. I think that's a great thing for Guardians to have access to. He can sort of pseudo-heal himself and gain resources with his Elder Sign, and his signature cards are pretty good. The first of which is Becky. It's a custom Marlin model 1894. It has a combat, an agility, and a wild skill icon. It costs 2 resources and has the item, weapon, and firearm traits. It's a Tommy Muldoon deck only. Uses 2 ammo. Each resource gained from Tommy Muldoon's reaction ability may instead be placed on Becky as ammo, which is cool. So it's a nice way to generate free ammo as well. And it has an action that says spend an ammo and fight. You get +2 combat and deal +1 damage for this attack, which is great. And it has the double hand slot, so it costs 2 hand slots. And his weakness is Rookie Mistake, which is the Blender and Flot traits, and has a revelation effect that reads, discard each asset you control with damage or horror on it. If no assets are discarded by this effect, shuffle Rookie Mistake back into your deck. So that kind of reminds me of Terrible Secret, Diana Stanley's weakness. Very similar sort of effect. Obviously not nearly as
Question
brutal,
to
but
Nate. When you say Terrible Secret,
yes.
in your head, do you start chanting Beautiful People?
Yes. The Marilyn Manson song.
Terrible Secret.
Yeah.
From now on, I want you to think that when you play that card.
Real quick, I saw on the Reddit regarding Tommy Muldoon that Fantasy Flight actually had kind of given a little hint about all his abilities. Way back, Man from Lang, you remember the April Fool's article that they released for Arkham Horror, the card game with all the dogs?
Right. The dogs.
So Tummy Rubs Muldoon was revealed with the same stat line, basically the same ability, but it said, when a squeaky toy asset you control is defeated, gain resources equal to the total amount of damage on that asset. And his Elder Sign was a +2. You may move up to 2 damage from a squeaky toy card you control to Tummy Rubs Muldoon. And same stat line. I mean, they actually had teased it way long ago.
So what were the other dogs in that set?
I don't remember.
Okay, so am I right? They should make Barkham Horror. They would sell so much of that game. I would sell it to people that come into my store going, yeah, I play Catan. What else should I play? You're going to play Barkham Horror is what you're going to play. Now sit down and paw up.
I would play that. I would really play
I don't know if they'd buy it then, but that's what I'd say. Let's sign a petition. Let's get a petition going. We got, 4 people in channel, 3 listeners, 7 people. I might get Matt Newman to sign off on it. That's 8. Let's do this.
But, yeah, man, what do you think about an investigator and guardian that can gain resources off of using ally assets?
Oh, Guardians need resources between them and Mystics, it's hard to know who needs them more. The ability to sack those, you don't even have to sack them. They've done their job. They were going to leave play anyway, and then you get them back. There's no limit here on how many times you can do it. So if something really clobbers you and you've got to get rid of all of your allies in one fell swoop, well, you get all those resources back, and then you get to shuffle them back into your deck as well.
Absolutely.
So you get to draw them and play them again. I love his Elder Sign effect because I can just see, all those opportunities to use Beat Cop multiple times. I mean, we haven't really had besides playing those, some of those events to heal Beat Cop. Now you've got a way to heal it and just keep pinging away with damage.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Is pretty cool.
Yeah, or if you are loaded on money and you have his custom asset out, you can use it as spare ammo, which is cool too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, his gun does take up both hands, which never which isn't a great thing. So you're probably gonna like Bandolier and Bandolier 2, is it?
Yeah,
I believe.
Well, those cards are also pretty useful because they have a sanity slot, I believe, too. So if they get discarded, you also gain.
Yeah, he gets the resource back and gets to shuffle the Bandolier back into his deck. So
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty. That's a pretty nice interaction.
Yeah, and you can put more ammo than what the gun starts with on it, so you can actually keep racking up that ammo on it, and then you'll be more or less set with it. If you keep taking the resources over. He seems like he's going to be really tanky. Like he's going to be able to take hit after hit after.
Yeah, well, he's the thing is he still has the 6 sanity, which is, I think, fairly average in this game. I think, and he doesn't have I think probably Yorick is a better tank, but if you're able to sack get a lot of those assets out and then sack them and then bring them back, then he's gonna be tough to take down.
It is possible that he could be like an off-class survivor, and then that would give him access to things like Leather Coat and Cherished Keepsake, which are both great cards in a deck, in a Tommy deck. Being able to gain 2 resources off of those cards is also just super gravy on top of them just being decent soak cards to begin with.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, if you look at we've got Patrice we've got Mandy who can take from 3 different classes. We've got Tony who can take certain cards from 2 other classes. We don't know what the other 3 investigators can do, but I wouldn't be surprised if these guys can also, maybe Tommy can pull from multiple classes as well. A limited selection of cards from multiple classes.
Yeah, I have a feeling for Tommy that they're going to make him Guardian and no secondary class, just some kind of keyword.
Yeah, which keyword would it be?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know what keyword. I'll have to look at some cards and see. But
I guess by keyword you mean trait, right?
Trait, sorry, yeah, trait.
So there are only 4 cards with the police trait, and they're all in Guardian anyway. So.
Yeah. Because based on his story, I don't know if Survivor's really. I don't know what it could be. I'd have to look and see what.
Yeah, he's obviously not going to be a mystic, but Seeker. Seeker always makes sense with Guardians, especially the police Guardians, because of that. That natural fit with investigating and hunting down criminals and whatnot. Maybe Rogue, but we've already got Leo who does that.
Yeah, and he already plays with a lot of allies.
So maybe Survivor is the way. We don't have a Guardian Survivor yet. So
it'd be interesting. Other than the fact that we haven't had a lot of neutral investigators, just Lola, I think at this point, it would be interesting if they had either a set of people and started doing this, or at least a one-off where they had their main big color and then their secondary color was neutral, but they got a plus to using neutral things. Neutral things either had a discount when you played them or a discount when you acquired them experience-wise. That way it would be kind of like having it be one of its colors.
Oh, that'd be
kind of
really
fun
cool
to play with.
Yeah, no, that would be interesting. Yeah, there's so much. They've got 20 plus investigators now, and there's still a lot of design space to explore.
Oh, What about tools? I wonder if they'll give him tools.
Tools would give him access to the fingerprint kit, the fire extinguisher, flashlight, gravedigger's shovel, the Hawkeye folding camera, lantern, lockpicks, and magnifying glass.
It's fitting for a cop.
I think, other than Patrice, Tony was kind of the other standout investigator for me. I'm not sure if we've discussed Tony Morgan. Nathan, what do you think about Tony Morgan?
Is there somebody named Tony? Oh yeah, the best investigator coming out in the new effing set. I'm glad you asked me. Tony Morgan, the bounty hunter. We're talking 2 willpower, 3 intellect, 5 fight. Can I repeat that? 5 fight, and 2 dodge. We won't really worry about the dodge. He's got some kind of planar flashiitis or whatever going on. So Tommy to me is kind of exciting because he kind of fills the role in a way of a guardian. Heavy fight, not the ability to evade well, kind of like a Leo. But I'm really excited on a flavor wise. I mean, I'm not really worried about how the deck works. Ask any of my friends that I play with. I'm not focused on the mechanics as much as the flavor. But I'm really excited to kind of see what kind of combos I can do with, sneak attack and the different knives, coup de grace, maybe knuckle duster, throw it in there for fun. And all the bounties seem like a cool concept. And what was that last one? The small favor, I think? That's the one where we could do a damage.
And what are the bounties, Nathan? I don't know what this guy does.
What are these bounties? It's the quicker picker-uppers. He can pick people up quickly with this bounty roll. Basically, as per the card, you can take an additional action during your turn, which can only be used to engage or fight an enemy with 1 or more bounties on it. Nate, because it's for some reason not pulling up on my thing. How many do you start with? Is it like 7? 6.
You start with 6, yep.
Yeah, so you have those to kind of... Oh, there it is. Starts with 6 bounties, up to 3 of which you can place on a spawn enemy of 3 hit points or higher. Enemy hit points will limit how many bounties you can place. For every hit point, you could have 1 bounty limit, 2 for 2, etc. But they give Tony's .38 long colt +1 for every bounty on that enemy. You fight with the signature colts. They can also... They get moved to Tony's resource pool with an enemy with the bounties defeated by Tony. Now, keep in mind it says by Tony. That matters. So you can't have like Carolyn Fern backstab it. The enemy does not have to be defeated by Tony's colts, by the way. It's just defeated by Tony. And finally, they give it additional actions which can be used to, as I said, engage or fight. So, pretty darn sweet. I'm looking forward to at least building out a couple different builds to try out with a Tony.
Do you think that, Nathan, he's going to step on the toes of Skids?
Nope.
A little too much?
No.
You don't think so?
I don't think... No, because he's more of a fighter. Skids is kind of slippery.
It's time for another irrelevant news update.
It was just a few minutes ago that I put out an Arkham community-wide petition to get Barkham Horror made into an actual thing. And so far, 100% of all Arkham Horror LCG players have signed it. So we're kind of looking at a guaranteed thing.
Look at you multitasking.
That's what I do.
Yeah, I think the rule is they have to respond.
Oh, shoot.
They have to respond if at least 90% of the players.
I just sent
sign the
FFG
petition,
a text saying 100% of all Arkham Horror LCG players have signed it. So, I mean, I just wanted to save all the busy work. So, yeah.
This has been another irrelevant news update.
All right, what else are we talking about?
Well, I want to
tonight,
go back
folks?
to Tony and Skids. What would make someone pick Skids over Tony? I want to talk about this.
Making a mistake?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Do you think that that's the only reason someone would play him over Tony?
No, I mean, I have some friends that actually Skids is their favorite character. They like the flavor. They like the concept of someone who's fallen from the graces of society picking it up when it comes to saving the world. So I think it all boils down to flavor. I kind of like the idea of a scrapping rogue.
That's a good point. Story wise, yeah, they're way different.
Yeah, I think Skids can be quite. I like playing him. If I can get his additional action off every turn, then I think he can be quite good. It's hard to do,
That's
but
the thing. It's very hard to do.
I think you would pick Tony over Skids in situations where you want access to good Guardian weapons because of the way Tony Morgan has to build his deck. You have to rely on just your Colts and whatever's in the Rogue card pool, which doesn't have the best weapons.
True.
well, level 0 weapons. They have some pretty good experience weapons that you can purchase, but yeah, at level 0 you're kind of limited to. But Tony does get 2 guns, and he does get to play one of them for free, I think, does he not?
It's only if you play them both at the same time.
Both at the same time. Yeah, that might be difficult to do, but... And rogues don't have a ton of draw either, so you're going to be... Maybe the lucky cigarette case can get it for you.
Yeah, I think that ability is kind of meh, in my opinion, but...
I feel like Tony is better suited for fighting like regular creatures, whereas Skids is meant for killing bosses.
That is an interesting concept.
Yeah, like Skids has a much higher evade, so he can exhaust bosses, which generally retaliate. Even though Tony's combat is a lot higher, he really can't evade enemies at all, and he's more reliable at hitting. So he'll be fighting the smaller things, whereas Skids will generally be evading things that don't hunt. So in a way, they do play quite a bit different, I guess, but still, I feel like they're just so close, filling kind of a similar, filling kind of a similar role, like a fighty rogue.
Well, Tony's combat. I mean, he's going to be a very combat oriented rogue, while Skids is his agility. So he's much more. He's much better at evading and locking down and sneak attacking and stuff like that, whereas Tony, sneak attack doesn't do Tony any good. Tony wants something like Small Favor, where he gets the 2 combat skill icons from the card, and he can dish out some extra damage. So I think the two investigators are going to play very differently, where Tony's going to get in your face and try to shoot you in the face. Skids is going to be far more likely to be ducking and weaving and trying to lock you down and get away.
Yeah, that's fair.
But, like Skids, he is terrible at dealing with the encounter deck.
Well, that's par for the course these days and with rogues. But, I mean, if it was really that bad, nobody would play rogues. But, I mean, rogues still see plenty of play. I know when I played Finn Edwards, and Finn's even worse.
Yeah.
And I never worried too much about the encounter deck. So
to be fair, Finn has 7 sanity, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, whereas Tony only has 5, so that 2 extra sanity might make you a little more cautious as to what's coming out of the encounter deck. But yeah, you do have pretty decent resource generation too, just with his whole bounty mechanic giving him extra money to play weapons and expensive events that you're presumably including in your deck, depending on what class you pick. But generally, what class would you guys pick if you were going to build a Tony Morgan deck?
That's a tough...
Yeah. It depends what you're looking to do.
Honestly, I don't know if it fits. Sorry to interrupt. I don't know if it fits, but it'd be kind of cool to have a fun Scrapper Survivor and play around with those cards.
So if you want to go solo, I think Survivor's the best choice. But if you're going in a group, you have the option of Guardian or Seeker, so you can actually fill either role. There's a lot of great Guardian events for combat and a lot of great Seeker events for combat. You can't play assets, but still, the events are going to be there. And for Survivor, if you pick Survivor, you're going to be a good all-arounder. So it'd be great for solo. So I think if you're going solo, you go Survivor. If you're playing 2 players and your partner's playing a combat-oriented character, then you'll go Seeker. and then the other way around. If your partner's a seeker or good at investigating, then you go guardian.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking quickly here at the Guardian card list, and I mean, Tony can take things like let me handle this, so he can pull enemies from other investigators during the Mythos phase. He's got, I mean, Guardian gives him access to dodge and dynamite blast, which are pretty good if you're playing multiplayer and you need to deal with a whole bunch of enemies. He's got emergency aid for healing if he needs it. He's got evidence, of course, if he needs to grab a clue here and there for killing something, which he's going to be doing anyway. He's got that new card that'll be coming out in Search for Kadath, the First Watch, which lets him distribute the encounter cards. So he does sort of fill that Guardian role fairly well. And of course, Prepared for the Worst lets him find his guns.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm going over the Seeker card list because I was curious, and there are some interesting choices. Like you have things like Working a Hunch and Shortcut, and preposterous sketches and things like that. But I think overall there's not a ton of things I think Tony wants from the Seeker class, because most of them, unless you're gonna dedicate Tony as someone that's gonna get a bunch of clues, then there isn't a lot in Seeker that's going to help you manage enemies for the most part.
You can still do deck search with like No Stone Unturned, or resource generation with Crack the Case and a couple of the other ones. So you can get more card draw or kind of what they call tutor type stuff from Seeker and benefit from that.
That's true, but I think that you can get that sort of stuff from other classes, and I think those classes will probably benefit Tony more. Like, I think, like Man was saying, like, you have, like, Prepare from the Worst and Evidence and Scene of the Crime and stuff like that from Guardian that kind of do the same things that cards in the Seeker card pool would do for Tony, but probably just better. But maybe I'm wrong.
I'm looking at the Survivor events, and of course there's things like Lucky in there. I'm not really blown away by the Survivor list. There's like Winging It, which is good. Look What I Found. I guess if you're playing him solo, you might want to go Survivor, because then you can get things like Look What I Found. But then, I mean, rogues have lockpicks, so it's easy. It's not that hard.
Yeah, but Tony can't really use lockpicks. At least not very effectively. He only has like a 5.
Yeah, but 5 is still pretty good. I mean, he would probably break picks more often than Finn would. But yeah, like there's Fight and Flight, which is pretty good, except it's the amount of horror on you, and Tony doesn't have a lot of sanity to be stacking that on there. Hiding Spot is kind of interesting if he needs to get away from something, because sometimes you do run into enemies you can't kill. Maybe he just wants to play Oops.
Maybe.
Wow.
Yeah, like...
I mean, he could also want to play, like, I've Got a Plan and Anatomical Diagrams, too, but I don't think that's likely.
He's not going to be waylaying anything.
No, certainly not.
I don't think he's really interested in Trial by Fire. I mean, Oops, I don't think anybody plays that as it is. I mean, Lucky, Live and Learn, and stuff like that are always going to be great, regardless.
Yeah, and I think that kind of harkens back to Vase's point about you're probably going to take Survivor in your solo games with Tony, just because those cards tend to be useful in the most amount of situations.
Well, I'm not sure. There's an awful lot of, like, I mean, Belly of the Beast, it's about evading. Tony doesn't care about that. There's Bait and Switch, that's about evading. Tony doesn't care about that.
Well, I mean, of the events that you would take, like Lucky
Yeah.
and Live and Learn and those things.
Yeah, like between Live and Learn and Lucky, there's 4 slots if you...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like realistically, like how many off-class slots are you taking for your events? Maybe 10?
Well,
Tops?
10 is what he can
Like-
take total from off-class skills and events. So... I've just been
take skills too.
I've just been looking at the events, so it's hard to say whether there's
Yeah,
there's
there are Just things like resourceful and like not without a fight in Survivor, which are interesting choices. Able-bodied might be something he might be interested in.
I've actually been really impressed by Last Chance recently, but
I have too. That card, since you recommended that deck to me, that you've been playing, I tried that in Curtain Call, and yeah, that card was very good. Even when you still have a couple of cards in your hand, it's still +2 or +3 icons, and you're pretty happy with that most of the time anyway.
yeah, I mean, even like Survivor skills, you get resourceful, so you get your luckies back. I mean, that stuff is good.
Seeker has things like Eureka and Curiosity, which are pretty lackluster choices, I think, for Tony. Before we move on, is there anything else about the investigators that they've spoiled throughout the past?
Who are we missing?
Well, we didn't talk anything about Luke the Dreamer.
I think we did
right?
in the initial, in episode 5, I believe we did.
Yeah, I know, but on this episode, for anyone who skipped it, simply put, he sounds fun too. The concept of being able to poof around the board and do stuff even though you're not there because you're considered there is kind of cool. But I'm curious to try him out too. I like Mystics, so give it a shot.
Yeah, man, you had did like a try playthrough on Octagon, right?
Yeah, I played him on Octagon, and he was fun. I think he still struggles with the same old Mystic problems. You know, he's kind of slow to set up and whatnot. But there's a lot of interesting potential with his ability to pop into his pocket dimension and then do all sorts of crazy stuff with events. So I'll definitely play him.
I don't get why they haven't come out with an equivalent for Mystics like they did with Guardians, with Ever Vigilant and what's that card? Not Prepared for the Worst. The one that it's a permanent and you can stack 3 cards on it.
Stick to the plan.
Stick to the plan.
So you're basically saying they haven't come up with a way to make a consistent Mystic?
Yeah, well, at least to set up quickly, because Guardians and Mystics both have the same issues of setup, but a higher level Guardian has those options where they can stack important cards on there and just start and play Ever Vigilant to play 3 assets in 1 action at a reduced cost. So
Sure.
It almost guarantees that they can set up easily on turn 1 and still have 2 actions left. Mystics have nothing even close.
I was thinking that a fun investigator would be a Mystic that starts fairly weak compared to some people, but is consistent.
Mm-hmm.
So you start with, some base spells in play or something, and you kind of get off the ground at a stable rate, and then
I got an idea. Every time you cancel something, her willpower goes up.
or something. Yeah. Oh my God, that's so good.
Yeah.
Can you text me your address right now, please?
Oh my goodness. But kind of on that point, I think from a flavor and a lore perspective, it's much easier to find a gun than it is to find mystical energy for a spell. So I think it makes more sense that Guardians have access to things like Prepare for the Worst and Stick to the Plan, because you can just like run into your tool shed and grab a machete, but you can't just like find your shriveling out of nothingness. So
That's true.
from that perspective, I see it, but I do agree that obviously that's the Mystic problem.
But here's the other thing
you
with
know.
Mystic. Sure, they have 1 stat they need to worry about, and I understand that that's part of the design is they have to have some kind of drawback because they literally can just focus on that 1 stat and be successful. But without those setup cards, they're useless because willpower is otherwise a defensive stat. Whereas most Guardians have a pretty high combat value to start with, 4 or higher, right? So if you have an enemy on you, even if you didn't set up, you can punch him for 1, and most enemies you can kill. Sure, it'll take 3 actions, but you can kill them in 1 round. Whereas as a Mystic, you're pretty much helpless until you get those cards in play. A Guardian is not necessarily helpless, and most Guardians have a decent intellect of a 3. I think there's only 1 that doesn't, and that would be Mark.
Zoe.
Zoe.
Zoe is a 2, I believe.
Okay, so Zoe and Mark. but every other Guardian has a 3 or higher, so at least they can investigate several different locations, especially at the higher levels, where most locations have a 2 or 3 shroud. Mystics, on the other hand, pretty much, I mean, their intellect usually is a 3 as well, but their combat values are always low, and they're helpless. They're helpless without it. So I just wish they had another way. And then they have all these utility spells that no one plays because of the slots. And sure, there's cards that will expand your slots, but again, they take time to find and set up just to expand the number of slots that you have. It's an issue. I hope that they do, and as more cards come out, it becomes an even bigger issue, because you have to decide which spells do I put in my deck, because if you have too many spells, you don't have enough slots for them, and they're just cards that you're going to end up committing for tests. So I do wish that they have some kind of solution for that.
Well, I haven't learned my lesson because I've played almost nothing but Mystic for the past, I don't know how many months now, bopping from Father Mateo to Marie to Diana, and playing many, many games with all of them, and I think certainly Marie and Diana are head and shoulders above Father Mateo, but yeah, you still have games where you can get set up too slowly, or you run into resource issues, and then you're struggling to make any headway. But then again, my Diana deck does have Indebted as its weakness, and I have the Tower as well, which makes it doubly difficult.
Oh God.
Yeah. You don't even have resources at that point. You're like already in the hole.
No,
so
you're I mean, between Indebted's 2 and 4 you need for Tower, that's 6.
Yep.
So
you're at -3 at that point. So
plus you've got, any decent spell is going to cost you 3 to 4. So yeah,
that is rough times right there, and not the Barkham Horror kind of rough, but the actual kind of rough. So, in other news, speaking of the Dream Eaters, they did announce the Search for Kadath, which is the first Mythos pack of the Dream Eaters cycle. So it looks like that this scenario sees the investigators actually going through portions of the Dreamlands itself. To quote the article here, it says, "After taking your first steps into the Dreamlands, you find respite in an inn of the strange land, but your mind continues to be tormented by thoughts of those you left behind in the waking world and the dangers they may face there. Perhaps if you find the lost castle and return with proof of the Dreamlands, you can save yourself, your friends, and the other dreamers whose fate is still unknown. But if you wish to gain this proof, you must leave the relative safety of your host behind and step into the unknown world of the Dreamlands." So, yeah, it shows the article itself shows some pretty neat art. I kind of wanted to get your opinion, Nathan, as someone that's a sales manager at a game store. How do you feel about FFG's recent trend of pre-order art prints? I don't know if we discussed this last episode or not.
Well, just for a second, sorry to segue. I had a thought, and the thought was, for people that have read anything about the Dreamlands or played role-playing games that encounter the Dreamlands, they are very trippy, very evocative, and full of emotion, and these dreamscapes that are hard to wrap your mind around. So I have a prediction about who's going to like and not like this set. And I think the people that are pretty laid back and flexible and have a wild imagination are really going to embrace it. But I think there's a slice of players, I don't know how big, where they like more concrete and more like real life things. So I think those people are going to like things like Dunwich and the Circle Undone more. And I think people that kind of like the time concept in Carcosa, or the time/wilderness of the Forgotten Age, I think those people are going to like the Dreamlands more. I get this feeling because when I talk to people about which set they like, when I talk to them when they come into Guardian, I definitely have people that like the flavor of something because it's either more accessible, more 1920s Lovecraft to them, and other people that are ready to kind of jump off and do whatever. So I definitely think people will be a little split on that, but I am uber excited. As far as, going back to your question, as far as the whole concept of pre-ordering for stuff, the fact that it's art prints doesn't excite me. I think if they ever did, if you pre-order this thing, you'll get an early investigator, then they would not have enough orders to, or product to fill the orders, because everybody would want that. But even though the art's fantastic, I can't see that being a major motivator.
Going back to what you were saying, Nathan, about the Dreamlands, do you think that's why they split this cycle into one that's more fantastical and, half of it is more fantastical and the other half is more like grounded? Do you think because they were maybe a little skeptical as to whether it was too fantastical for some people?
Yeah, maybe. I definitely think certain people are going to appeal to different cycles differently, but I mean, they've been batting 1,000, I think. So really can't do wrong in general.
Do you think the more grounded people would then it would still appeal to them if they just did the half that was more grounded in Arkham?
Very potentially, yeah. Let's find out. We'll come back to that on a episode coming up and be like, remember when you said this thing, Base?
Episode like 15 or 16, like 8 months from now when all the packs are released.
There you go.
So what do you guys think about the cards that they revealed for this?
Yeah, Man had mentioned First Watch, and that card is sweet. It's a 1-cost Guardian event. It has a intellect and agility icon. It has the tactic trait and reads fast. Play when the draw encounter card step of the Mythos phase would begin. Instead of resolving that step, look at the top X cards of the encounter deck, where X is the number of investigators. Deal those cards among the investigators as you wish, dealing no more than 1 to each investigator other than yourself. Then, 1 at a time, each investigator draws the cards dealt to them. So this is super cool. This is a great way for Guardians to make sure that they're the ones getting the enemies put onto them. And if they're paired with a Mystic, they can make sure they take care of something like a Rotting Remains, or some silly hex if you're in the Circle Undone or something like that. Or if you're with a Rogue and you're in TFA, they can take care of something like Entombed. So this card is just generally pretty sweet. What do you guys think about this card?
I think I like it a lot. I like what it kind of hints at, which is that they are maybe starting to play around with player cards that kind of get tweaked based on the number of players. I think that's an interesting idea that they're starting to experiment with, hopefully. Because we've only really had encounter cards, I think, or scenario cards that scale based on number of players. But I can't recall a single player card that did that until this one. So that's a nice way to introduce that, and hopefully there are more cards that do that. But the cards' effects themselves, I think it's fantastic. It makes I think of all the Guardian cards, this is one of the ones that really shows what Guardians do for their group, and that's basically to protect them.
And heal sanity, as per the botanist. Hey, I think, didn't Matt Newman himself come out and say something along the lines of, for this first expansion, he put like a ton of work into the act agenda or story? He had mentioned it was like a departure / evolution for him to work on this.
Yeah, I have not heard of that being the case specifically.
I will go find it while you talk and continue.
So the other card that was spoiled was Jessica Hyde. It is a new upgraded survivor ally. Man from Lang, I know you've kind of already discussed this card on your YouTube channel, but why don't you go ahead and read this card for us?
Yeah, she's a 3-cost asset that costs 1 experience point. She's got a combat skill icon, the ally Wayfarer and Cursed traits. You get +1 combat while she's in play. And she enters play with 2 damage on her, and she's got the response, after your turn ends, you can heal the damage from her. She's got 3 health and 1 sanity, so she's basically the damage version of Peter Sylvester, and Peter is an absolutely amazing card who has saved my bacon more times than I can count, so having a damage version of him is going to be very nice for certain investigators.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are a lot of investigators that are interested in a card like this. Yorick likes this card a lot, because he can just use Cherished Keepsake to tank whatever sanity he needs to. There are a couple off-class survivors, I believe, that are pretty interested in this. Maybe Preston, depending on the build that you go for. It's nice to just have something that soaks up a bunch of damage for you. What are some investigators that come off the top of your head, Vase?
That would use this? Oh, man. I think every survivor would love it. I think Yorick definitely is going to make him all... Pairing this and Peter together in a Yorick deck is going to make him nearly unkillable at this point.
Calvin loves her.
Calvin definitely loves her. Yeah. Yeah, that gives him a lot of breathing room.
Yeah,
And-
really. I mean, you really have to walk the line with him and being able to soak that damage turn after turn, so you can basically hover at 4 damage on you and then just let her deal with the rest of it is pretty sweet.
So do you think there's going to be like that charisma Jessica Hyde plus Peter Silvestri build of Calvin that becomes popular when this card is released? Because I definitely think that's certainly doable.
I mean, playing both of them, you're soaking a damage and a horror every turn.
It's huge. For Calvin, that's tremendous.
That's pretty
Yeah,
good.
and then if you have the 5 of Cups, right, or 5 of Pentacles, so you can like walk the line even further. Yeah, so this card is really interesting. Definitely worth the 3 resources that you put into it. The +1 combat is obviously reason alone to play this card, but yeah, like we've been saying, just the fact that it soaks up tons of damage is also
So
just excellent.
survivors now have, if they put Jessica Hyde and Peter, they have the damage soak and the horror soak. They get a +1 to combat, willpower, and agility, and they can Dark Horse and get a +1 to all their stats. So that could be pretty nice. I mean, that's a lot of cards that you'd have to set up, but basically you're getting +2 to pretty much all your stats except Intellect. And again, Calvin, it'd be huge in Calvin to just get +2 to pretty much all his stats as it is, and then all the additional benefits of being able to absorb the damage. Calvin could actually turn into a really, really playable investigator in any mode.
Yeah, because you've had decent experience with Calvin recently, right? Because you've been in a Circle and Done campaign.
Yeah, this guy that we play with, Aaron, he loves Calvin, and he's been playing with him and doing actually surprisingly well. And nothing in the build really like screams out, "Oh, this is what's making that deck great," versus decks that I've played. But this guy just knows how to play him. He just knows how to really leverage the abilities and like Man from Lang said, walk that line and be able to manage it somehow. So it's been pretty good. We've had a couple of bad scenarios, but that's just all of us as a whole. In fact, it was Akachi who ended up dying on the Mythos phase of turn 3. So she literally played 2
Ooh,
turns
that's
and
brutal.
died. And I think it was Union and Disillusion. The encounter deck, since we were 4 players, 4 encounter cards, and she was in a location with a haunted ability that was, I think it dealt horror or something, and she had just taken a horror from, or a couple horror from Shriveling. So she was already down, and then the creature hit her, so she was down some more, and then a couple of us pulled the cards that make the haunted abilities in your location go off. So she just took a bunch of horror. It literally Mythos phase of turn 3 dead by horror. Just went insane. She played 2 rounds.
Damn, that's brutal.
Anyways, that was a...
Yeah, and there was one other card that's I totally missed. The Scroll of Prophecies.
I knew you were going to say that.
Nathan, I'm surprised you... I was just going to say, oh my god, I knew you were going to say that.
Knew you were going to say that. I knew we were all going to say this.
This is getting way too meta for me. Vase, do you want to read Scroll of
I knew you were gonna
Prophecies
say-
for us?
Okay, I'm done.
Scroll of Prophecies is a mystic...
Did you say Squirrel of Prophecies? Because that's
Scroll
nutty.
of Prophecies is a mystic asset. 3 cost, 1 willpower icon. Uses 4 secrets. Use an action to spend 1 secret. Choose an investigator at your location. That investigator draws 3 cards, then discards 1 card from their hand. I would say the hand slot is a problem, but since it's Mystic, it's not a problem.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, this is an auto-include in Daisy now, right? This is like strictly better old book of lore.
It's amazing. And you can knowledge its power, so fast action. Have someone draw 3 cards, discard 1 card.
Mm-hmm. That seems pretty good.
Yeah. I like
this
it
would
a
be
lot.
pretty sweet with Mandy, too, where you could, draw 4 and discard a card.
That's, wow.
That's pretty good.
It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, there's really not much to say about this card. It's pretty just generically good. It does cost 3 resources in a class that is, like we've said earlier in this episode, pretty tight on its resources. But, I mean, you're probably playing this. You're definitely playing this in Daisy. What other mystics or off-class mystics do you guys think want a card like this?
Certain Carolyn builds definitely like it.
Would that be considered Norman Withers?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but Norman only gets 5.
I
5 mystic cards.
Yeah, it's kind of the shaft.
Because Safina has a bigger hand anyways, so she definitely likes drawing cards. Oh, no, she doesn't have a bigger hand. She just starts with a bigger hand is what it is, right? Oh, okay. Still, she likes drawing cards because she plays a lot of events, so...
Yeah, I mean, even someone like Agnes, who may not necessarily need the card draw, might want something like this. Just to get her shrivelings and get her forbidden knowledge faster. Yeah, I mean, card draw is always good, so it's hard to dispute it. Man, what do you think about this card?
Yeah, I like it. I'm not sure if I would play it in Mystics. I mean, card draw is great, but it's the 3 costs that sort of I struggle with, because the Mystics are all right. Maybe I'm just having trouble with Mystic resources because of the Diana deck that I'm playing and being so resource stretched all the time. That's probably not the norm, but it just feels like spending 3 resources that doesn't let me investigate or fight. It will draw you 3 cards, which is good, but then you've got to pay for those cards on top of this. And it does take an action, which I'm not a big fan of cards that take an action to play and an action to use to get the benefit. They're a little too labor intensive for solo, but I agree that card draw is amazing, and Mystics could certainly use it to fish out their stuff a lot faster. I'll definitely give it a try and see how it whether it's worthwhile or not.
Yeah, so this is obviously more of a multiplayer card. I think it like you said, it's really action intensive because you're spending an action to play it, and then you're spending an action to use it, and then you're drawing 3 and discarding a card, where in that time you could have just drawn 2 cards.
But I think that the thing that about this card is that it doesn't exhaust. So if you play it, you can play it, use it twice, so you've drawn 6 cards and discarded 2. So you get a chance to in one, if you're willing to spend the turn to do it, you
use
can
it twice.
Essentially sculpt your hand for a turn, which definitely has value. And if you're playing it in somebody like Daisy, who gets that extra action, you can draw 9 cards and discard 3. And if you don't like what's in your hand at that point, then I'm not sure what else you can do. I mean, if you've drawn a third of your deck in one turn and you can't find something to like about that, then
yeah, you probably don't like the 30 cards.
So yeah, I mean, it's definitely value. If you're willing to commit to it, I think it could you could do some good work with it. But yeah, like we were talking before the show started. Most of my solo games seem to be 10 to 12 rounds. So committing a turn to this is tough.
You said before the show started. Was that when I had you laugh? Was that time that twilight period?
That was exactly that one time.
That moment. Okay, you're good. Never mind.
That one time. Yeah.
So far, it's been once. All you listeners.
Yeah, no, I'm keeping track. I have
Me
a
too.
chalkboard on my wall here, and I have one.
You're not going to need a lot of chalk.
I like the chalk that came in different colors.
You got like one of those
Like
little
the
chalk
yellow
nubs.
chalk and
Remember
the
those
blue
little chalk
chalk.
nubs?
I like
Do it.
I've been meaning to revisit Father Mateo since
I love Father
Mystic's got all the good stuff this cycle.
He's
They
gotten
seem to
better.
get a lot of great cards, and I would
Indeed.
like to revisit Father Mateo to see if he's... Because he wasn't super great the last time I played him.
Well, speaking of which, I'm about to go do Depths of Yoth in my Forgotten Age campaign Monday, and it's the furthest I've gotten. Spoilers, because that campaign just kicked my ass last time I played it. But in this particular campaign run, I'm doing Father Mateo, and man, it feels good. I love his ability.
Good luck in Depths of Yoth. That's
I hear it's a letdown.
gonna be a fun playthrough. No, it's a lot of fun. How many people are you playing with?
Because there's levels. 'Cause
I missed it. Sorry, that's
That's all right. It's okay. You and everybody else.
I thought it was like an onion. Nathan, because it has layers. It has layers.
There's layers.
How many players?
There's 4 of us in the campaign.
Ooh.
Whatever that means. I'll know more. I haven't played Depths of Yoth yet, so it's important for me to A, play it so that you're all going to talk about it soon, and B, because I'm going to host a Depths of Yoth challenge at the event October 27th, which is a Sunday at Guardian Games, which you should all come to. Have I talked about the swag? Did I say the official swag, or did I just kind of mention it?
You just kind of mentioned it.
What do we got?
By the same token, Chris, I've got him working on a special board. Andrecia Garnier out of Canada, who does all the great things on Momo Monster Co. They're on Etsy. Her fantastic mats. She's either going to do a new mat with an underwater theme, which people can use for Innsmouth, or if they just like the nautical theme, or she might give us some credits so people can get some free downloads. I also have some tokens coming in general. I have rule books that are already bound up. I'm not sure who it was off the top of my head, but someone had made the rule books, the initial ones, and then somebody else had recently done a Photoshop paperback version for cheap. I'm going to hook somebody up at the event with a full set of those for free. And then I'm going to have some art. I have a couple different pieces of art made. The poster of the most recent event that I made, done by Cole Monroe Chitty. And then I also have some art done by James Sinclair, who used to work at Dark Horse Comics. And that art is unseen by anybody
Wow.
except for me and James. And I'm going to be sending a copy of that art to Matt Newman himself, our friends at Mythos Busters, our friends at Drawn to the Flame, and of course all of us will get that as well. And it will be at the con.
Very cool.
Oh, very cool.
Oh, and that's not even everything. I'm not even saying all the stuff in case it falls through. Needless to say, I'm going to make it an event to go to every year starting this year.
So, Nathan, do you have any community spotlight things that
Of
you want to
course.
mention this
Yeah,
month?
I have a couple things. First of all, I have my quiz for the night. And then I also have my community spotlight, which is fan-made investigators. Okay, so as I said earlier, I counted in my own personal supply, which apparently is wrong already. But I counted roughly 30 official investigators. And then I also counted roughly 22. Now, to be fair, there are a lot of fan-made investigators floating out there in the Etherverse because they are the quickest to make. If you get on Strange Eons right now, you can have a fan-made investigator done in roughly 20 to 30 minutes. Is it balanced? Maybe. Is it thematic? Probably. Is it cool? Yeah, always cool. What I've done is I've gone through and found a lot of the fan-made investigators that I felt had good flavor, good mechanics, not too overpowered, and printed those off. For everybody here in channel, did everybody get a chance to see the picture that I posted using the crayon boxes, the plastic boxes that are already colored and have a snap top?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I saw the one that was like, you had like all the decks assembled in the boxes.
What I did was I found at a yard sale, these awesome crayon boxes. Apparently, you can get them at Walmart. I don't know. You can definitely see them on Amazon, but they're just perfect for the size of a investigator deck. And guess what? The colors they come in are yellow, green, this purplish color, this orangish red color, and yellow. So I went ahead and put the characters in their own colors. And then I also have a lot of clear ones. Not sure what I'm doing with them because after I did Lola Hayes and my fan-made neutral investigator, I have a lot of clear left over. But a really important note to make, and if you remember one thing about fan-made scenarios and fan-made investigators, it's this. You can pick a fan-made investigator and not really feel a big difference. They don't have that much pull, believe it or not, on the flavor and enjoyment of a scenario or a one-off. If you pick a fan-made scenario, it's gonna feel obviously very flavorful and very strong. I say that having played a lot of the fan-made investigators and played a lot of the fan-made scenarios, I will often find myself in the midst of a, let's just say, Heart of the Elders game, or what was that I just did recently with a fan-made investigator? Last
of the Mohicans.
What's the second one in on Carcosa?
The Last King.
Thank you. What the shit are you smoking, Vase? Last the Mohican. So, as I was saying, yeah, that one, the Last King. What do you call it? Vase threw me off.
Last King.
Okay, that's what I said. So I did the Last King with O.B. Laveau, which is a voodoo witch doctor mystic that someone had made. And I forgot many times that I was playing a fan-made investigator. So it's really kind of cool to test out the fan-made stuff and just kind of feel how it's different and build the deck around it. But you are going to get swept up in whatever scenario you're doing. So one main source of finding fan-made investigators is simply by Googling fan-made investigators for Arkham Horror, the card game. That said, there's even some posted up on the Fantasy Flight games, which is fantastic, under the community board. One big mover and shaker is Soakman on the Fantasy Flight games. Soakman had done several. My favorite of Soakman's is Sadie Godfrey, the Abomination. And basically, she's a woman of the night who was traumatized, and so her weakness, she basically turns into Miss Hyde, basically. She looks like she's got blood dripping down her mouth and on her hands, and she scares off all your other allies, and anybody who enters your location or vice versa takes a horror. So it's kind of brutal, but really fun to play. I like playing her. She's a survivor with a 4 fight. I've played her several times. Another fun one is from the same person, Soakman, Hosea Mayhew. He's a minor guardian, also 4 fight, but he works with allies. He basically starts you with an additional ally slot. But I put with him, I put a lantern and a gravedigger's shovel, a leather coat. I just kind of did stuff like that where it would be pretty thematic. Maybe it wasn't leather coat. It was a neutral variant. So anyway, those are a couple from Soakman. I also wanted to cover one more major influencer. And this is on Reddit's Best of Custom Cards 2017. If you look that up on Board Game Geek, there's several there. There's Alma Winters, who's a rogue. Ivan Orlov, the mystic, who looks like Rasputin. David Emerson, who is a woodsman. That's the survivor. Edith Alexander is the guardian, and she only has a 2 fight, and she was a precursor to Carolyn Fern. Very challenging to play, more of a supporter role. And then finally the Seekers, Ainsley Wentworth Esquire. He's a lawyer for the Seekers, and he's a lot of fun too. So I was also going to touch on a few other fan-made ones that I enjoyed. Here's one that's going to throw you for a loop. Harry Houdini. Does anybody know the connection between Lovecraft and Houdini in real life?
Yes.
Ooh, Man from Lang.
Lovecraft wrote for him, didn't he?
Well,
Do I get a point for the quiz?
Ghost wrote.
He ghost
You
wrote.
do. I'll give you a point ahead of time.
Excellent. That's the
He
way.
ghost wrote Under the Pyramids, I believe. In Prison with the Pharaohs, 1924, a short story ghost written by H.P. Lovecraft featuring Houdini. And, he was in the same time period, and they did end up making him a rogue with 4 decks. So I've tried him out, and he's fun. A little overpowered for the assets, but I take that into account when I play him. And then I also really like Ferdinand Fellini, who's a rogue custom-made investigator who, get this, is a knife thrower. So it's cool to have a character with this kind of neat gypsy-like look who's good at throwing knives. I kind of like that concept. And then finally, I wanted to actually mention a friend of mine, Michael Hawkins, who I see at the store. He made a neutral investigator based off of Stephen Leeds. And of course, I'm blanking on the book that comes from. But Stephen Leeds basically sees spirits. So in the neutral deck that he made, you can have different spirits be in play at a given time. And I think one of his assets that he made was lemonade. And when you get this refreshing lemonade, it helps you. Yeah, refreshing lemonade is the asset. The bad spirit, however, the treachery, is Armando. And that makes you discard another spirit from play. But his stat line is crap. It's 2s across the board. But based on the spirits you get, there's Tobias the historian, Ivy the psychologist, Audrey the cryptographer, and JC the security expert. And like you might expect, each of them gives you boosts to your stats. But of course, if you... Oh, I'm sorry. There's also Lua the survivalist. But if
Her name
you
is
drink
Lua?
refreshing...
L-U-A?
L-U-A, uh-huh.
That's my wife's name. Look at that.
Well, that's interesting. And then the refreshing lemonade lets you choose an aspect that you did not start and play with, because you can only pick a few of them. It lets you get an additional aspect into play. And of course, if you draw Armando, that kills off one of the aspects in play. And there's 2 lemonade and 2 aspects, or 2 Armandos. So you never know if you're going to have a good run with extra aspects, or if you're going to get kind of deprived. But cool concept, at least. And once again, it gives us another person to play with. But ultimately, I have 100%. When I say I love fan-made investigators and I love fan-made scenarios, I have 100% respect for all the hard work that the people at Fantasy Flight Games do day in and day out, with their marketing, with their play testing, with bringing this game to life for us. Matt Newman does a fantastic job, bar none. I just think it's also fun to add the community passion and ideas to it, just because it allows you to play the game in different ways if you want to, and of course nobody has to. So anyway, that's my wrap up. I do recommend, if you haven't, Googling a few, printing them off. They're fairly cheap to do so. Someone had noticed, because I posted the video of me scrolling through all of them, someone posted that I had in fact had one made for myself by a friend. I didn't ask him to do so. He did it for me. But it's pretty funny. My asset card is a clock, and it said, the quote is, "Time waits for one man," and it allows me to, as a fast action, if I draw the card, play extra assets on my turn as kind of free actions. So just kind of a neat concept. But I'm known as the collector in my fan-made one because of, my Arkham Horror collection. Any questions about all that jazz that I just threw at your face?
So I googled Arkham Horror fan-made investigators, and the first one that comes up is Peter Parker. Have you played this one?
No, that kind of broke the fourth wall for me. There's Peter Parker, and then there's somebody did a vampire one, which is cool. I haven't printed those off just because 1920s and Peter Parker aren't quite concurrent.
All right.
But go for it.
Have you played Vanessa con Blanco yet by Mr. Wolf?
No, she's on my short list. She's fascinating because with that character, you get an entire, like, half the deck.
Half a
of
deck,
the deck
yeah.
is like you dealing with all your baggage that you have deep within your memory, and like you're dealing with a villain in your memory, you're dealing with good times and bad times. It's just this roller coaster
It's
of
like
emotions.
a side story,
Yeah. So it's like you're playing
It's
your own
great.
thing in your head, kind of like Patrice dealing with that enemy that's hidden. She's kind of dealing with
Yeah.
her own stuff. I mean, that
What's cool with her
concept
though,
is really cool.
I thought it would be too involved with her side story to successfully do any scenario on its own, but it wasn't. It was just right for some reason.
Cool.
Yeah, it worked out just right. Like you got the side story, but it didn't interfere too much with the rest of the
That's
investigations. Yeah, yeah. So, and I ran her through a few scenarios, and she was a lot of fun to play with.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I want to do one other thing with Community Spotlight before we move on to the quiz. Is the League of Extraordinary Investigators. We are on season 2, so you can join the League Discord. It's too late to join to play, but if you want to watch people playing, there's games going on every day, and the scores are updated every day. And our very own Nate, Lost in Time and Space, has joined season 2.
I have.
So that's
true,
a lot
yep.
of fun.
And he's a champion. Nate's a champion, so he's going to win. Go, Nate.
Thanks, man. Yeah, we're gonna crush. Yeah, Peter is gonna go in with Duke, and we're gonna.
I'm in last place right now.
That's what's gonna happen. I'm not gonna chump up like you. And sorry, I was very excited, but we're gonna crush it. I got a plan, and it's gonna go totally terrible.
If I can beat you, Nate, I'll be happy because you are the champion, as Man from Lang said. So I'd be happy just to finish above you. Because I'm not going to win.
No,
I'm not
jeez.
going to win at all.
I mean, if your first run is indicative of anything,
I was in
probably
last.
not.
I finished last place in season 1, so that's an accomplishment. You know, it's a standout performance.
Who did you play in season 1?
Skids. In Dunwich, and the first scenario just derailed me for it was horrible.
Oh, right. You were asking for advice for... Yeah, I remember you were asking for advice about what to do.
with Essex County.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Goddamn
so
scenario.
bad.
And I guess I did have a tail addendum. As far as the fan-made investigators, someone also made a Duke, and it has no hand slots because it's a dog.
That's great.
But if you want to play Duke, you could actually do it. It's really cute. You know, I kind of want to, and what do you all think of this? I kind of want to go ahead and do, you know how the different podcasts did all yellow or all seeker, all purple all the time, whatever, and everybody kind of did their own and collaborated. I think it'd be fun to do if each podcast or what's content person out there did a fan made on Strange Eons, did a fan made investigator, and we gave each group a different class to focus on, including someone doing a neutral one, and kind of talk
That'd be
about
fun.
what people made, why they made it.
we should get
how
in
they
on that.
balanced
Yeah, that
it.
would
That'd
be
kind of
fun.
fun. We ready for the quiz? All right, here we go. You all know the rules. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 cards in today's quiz. Man from Lang, refresh my memory. What did you get a point for?
For telling you what Harry Houdini, the relationship between Harry Houdini and...
Yes. Point 1, Man from Lang. Mark it. All right, next question. Here we go. Otherworldly Compass is the card, and here's the quote. It always points where... Finish that sentence for the quote on the card. It always points where... etc.
Where you don't want to go.
Boom, Man from Lang, point.
Oh,
Excellent
man.
job. Let me ask you a question. Did you, in fact, Google the answer?
No, I didn't.
He laughed.
Oh, that was a laugh.
He laughed on that one.
Wow.
I was watching his bar. That was his laugh. Mark it. 2 hours, 3 minutes, 30 seconds. Episode 8. Great Old Ones Gaming. Boom,
Yep.
I retired. Done.
Nathan wins
that
the
was
quiz.
good.
And I have 2 points.
I didn't know it'd be frickin' Otherworldly Compass, a.k.a. the humor card for Canadians that got that one. But good job.
Nathan wins.
Good job. I'm proud of you. All right, here we go. Here's another one. Whose tagline is "Deals with Devils"?
Diana Esperance.
Oh, yeah. Shoot.
Boom! Another point, man from Lang. On fire. I don't know what kind of firefighting systems you employ up in the great
North
country of Canada, but you might want to call them. Next one. There is one, and I repeat, one weakness that has handcuffs in the picture. Name it.
Oh.
Stubborn detective?
Boom.
Yes.
Point. Nate, good job. I'm just going to make some piles of points up here. I would have also accepted a random card that I don't know the name of. All right, here we go. Next one. Ooh, this one's a tough one. I'm going to read the quote. You tell me the card. And I don't know if anybody will get this, listener or podcasters, okay? Open your eyes and listen to your shadow.
You said it's a player card or encounter card?
Right? It's a player card. Open your eyes and listen to your shadow. Isn't that the weirdest effing quote? Any guesses? The window's closing.
Why is something...
I'm going to say haunted.
You said player card.
Okay. At least he stepped up to the base face. All right, I'll just tell you, otherwise this will drag on. The Moon tarot card. When the game begins, if the moon is in your opening hand, put it into play. Get a dodge. Open your eyes and listen to your shadow. That was a weird one. All right, next. Please name the card that features a garrote.
Oh, not backstab, sneak attack.
Boom, base, point. I'm going to make a little pile for base. It's right here by your front door. All right, now this one might be easy, might be difficult. For the card Trusted, Guardian card, there are 2 investigators in dire straits. Please name how many flashlights and how many guns are in the picture.
2 flashlights, 2 guns.
1 flashlight, gun, 1 gun.
2 flashlights and 1 gun.
Was that both Nate and Man from Lang saying 2 and 2?
No, I said 1 and 1.
I said 2 flashlights, 2...
1 flashlight,
I said 2
1 gun.
flashlights, 1 gun.
I said 2 flashlights, 2 guns.
Okay. Point, base.
And answered first. Ooh.
Double the flashlight. Well, and you have to understand that so many people have flashlight because it was in the core set. Okay, doing great. 3 questions left. How are we looking? Man from Lang at 3. Nate at 1. Vase at 2. It's anyone's game. Here we go. This one's a quote. We should have thrown it back immediately, but how could we have known?
Oh, I know this one.
That's so... Oh.
Saying I know this one does not count as an answer.
Grizzly Totem?
Boom, Nate, 2 points. Good job. As in 2 total. I'm
So
not going to
2,
give
2,
you 2
and
for that.
3? Wow.
All right.
Okay.
2, 2, and 3. Lang's still killing it. Good job. All right, here we go. Hemispheric map has great wording down below, has some pips, has some experience. But there are 2 things in the picture along with the map. What are those 2 objects?
A compass and a magnifying glass.
That's a good answer, but not correct.
I'm gonna go with a compass. You said the map already, right? Not
The
not
map
counting
is
the
one
map.
of the things in the hemispheric map picture. I kind
the
of give
map-
a look to the listeners, you know, like they do on The Office. Like really? Okay, go ahead.
So the map and the compass, right? Or are you saying the map counts?
In addition
Doesn't
to
count.
the map, there are 2
In
items.
addition to the map. So the compass is clearly a correct answer.
Is it?
Yeah. and a hat.
Okay, Nate. Anything?
I know.
You looked it up, didn't you? It's
I
gone
did.
forever. Although mentally,
No, I won't. I won't tell.
Mentally, I'll give you half point.
No, I won't tell.
I'll tell you, it was a compass and a pencil. These are good questions. Like I should get paid extra for this. I don't.
So,
I actually
Man
haven't
from Lang-
received a paycheck as of yet.
So do do Man from Lang and
Oh,
I
that's
each
a
get half
male,
a
don't
point?
worry.
Nope. Good
Because
try.
we both
All right,
said
here we go.
compass. Oh.
Shut it. All right, here we go. Ritual candles. How many candles are in the picture?
5.
2.
What the hell?
3?
Your guesses. That is correct. Nate. Boom. Tying with Man from Lang. I kind of feel like we need a tiebreaker. Hold on one second. I got an idea.
If I got half a point from
you
hemispheric
don't get it.
map,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be a tie.
Let's see. Okay, here we go. Everybody, clear your minds. Vase, you are disqualified from this insta win point.
Why? I
Nate
could tie.
and
It could
Man
be a
from-
3-way tie.
Shut it. Somebody mute him. All right, here we go. Nate and Man from Lang. First one to mention one of the fan-made investigators I talked about wins. Go.
It wasn't Peter Parker.
Harry Houdini?
Boom. Nate. What do you do, Peter Parker? I didn't. Although, if anybody out there plays Peter Parker and has a good time, please let us know. Write to Vase, he'll get you a prize. Excellent job, everybody. That was probably the closest, except for Vase, the closest, most exciting trivia round we've done yet. And for the fans out there that got some of those correct. Fun fact, my question for Ritual Candles was actually going to be after you had all said 3, because I thought it was kind of obvious. But since you didn't know, I let that be the question. The actual question was going to be, how many of the candles are lit?
2.
2.
Man from Lang, bonus point. Technically you're tied, but we've already called a winner. So, good job, everybody.
No, that's because I looked it up.
Okay, so hey, real quick, and fans can write in if they have strong opinions either way. But how do you feel about the way I kind of do the questions? Some quotes, some pictures, some
I like a mix.
hodgepodge. A mix, like a Chex Mix.
Oh, I love
mix is
Chex
good.
Mix.
Cool, right? I had that earlier
Especially
today.
those bagel
Oh,
chips.
The
those
bagel
bagel
cheese
chips.
fix.
No, you're
No, the
wrong.
cheese
bagel
fix
chips. Oh, and the wheat.
Cheese fix.
Was it the
cheese
wheat?
fix is the
The
word.
wheat Chex Mix part in there, the darker brown ones, those are good too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are
What?
Yeah,
No.
Vase, just someone remute him, please.
it's wrong. It's fine.
Everybody did a good job, though.
It's fine.
Vase, even though you didn't win, I thought you had some good presence there. Good job. Proud of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, at least I could do.
Appreciate it.
So.
Well, with that, that's gonna end tonight's episode. Does any of you guys have anything to say before we wrap things up here? Or
I mean, I just want to say how much I appreciate being on this podcast with all y'all makers and lovers of the game Arkham Horror, and hope to see some of you at the event. And for those I don't see at this year's event,
Yeah.
hopefully you'll make it for next year's.
Check out that Delta Green game that we're posting. It's a lot of
absolutely,
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited about
fun.
that.
It's
too.
only part 1. There's still,
probably
More
2
parts
to
to go.
3 more parts to edit. So
yeah. But it was so much fun. It was such a blast.
yeah, the first episode is about an hour and a half long. So if you got a long car drive, it's a good listen. So yeah, check that out. Other than that, yeah, we're gonna be hosting Beneath the Waves, Octhulu 27th of 2019. So you can find us there next month. And with that, we're gonna end tonight's episode. As always, I'm Nate, lost in time and space.
I am the man from Lang, host of the Whisper in Darkness YouTube channel.
I'm Innkeeper Vase Odin of the Twisted Tentacle Inn.
And I'm Nathan Early at Guardian Games on Arkham Central and on the Instagram at Arkham Horror Images of Madness.
Thank you so much for listening.